August 18th, 2019. 22 years ago, Don Lewis walked out the door and never returned. I just discovered that I can tag my journal entries based on a search, so I just now searched and tagged all of the entries for Don Lewis. Yesterday, I finished listening to Season 1 of Over My Dead Body by Wondery, and am even more sure that my story, and Don's, will be told inaccurately in order to make the podcast more enticing to listeners. Even when the killer had confessed to murdering Dan Markel and was sitting in jail, the storyline continued to try and attribute his actions to others. It seemed like the whole purpose was to cast doubt on all in Markel's life. I'm wondering if I should be ready, when this thing airs, to have my diary printed and ready to dispute the unfounded accusations that are likely to be thrust at me and others in Don's life. This is a quote. "I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened," unquote, was attributed to Mark Twain in Reader's Digest, April 1934. I keep rolling that around in my head, wondering if doing such a preemptive response is smart, paranoid, and or just a total waste of time. So much of my recent correspondence with journalists lately seems to have been a huge waste of energy. That time would be better spent on trying to figure out how to land a Republican Senate lead sponsor for the Big Cat Public Safety Act. Last night, Howie and I watched the documentary Get Me Roger Stone, and as deplorable as he seems, I found myself wondering if he's available. We're having severe weather. That's what that sound is. We really need a Republican to co-lead at, or our bill goes nowhere. I just found this online while searching for the mugshot that BCR Watch likes to use of Don. I was wondering when that was taken. This is from thecharlieproject.org/case/Jack Donald Lewis. And this is going to be a little bit hard for you to understand what I'm doing because I have text and then in italics I have my response to the text. So I'll try to make it clear as I go through. The details of disappearance with my commentary in italics. Then this was what they had written. Jack was last seen in Tampa, Florida on August 18, 1997. He left home early that day and made a delivery around 6 o'clock a.m. He has never been heard from again. The next day, his white 1989 Dodge van was found abandoned at the Pilot Country Airport, a private airport near State Road 52 and US 41 in Pasco County, Florida. The keys were on the floorboard, and there was no sign of Lewis. He knows how to fly a plane, and he owns several, but he'd been involved in 3 aviation accidents, and his pilot's license was suspended at the time of his disappearance. And then this is my note. Actually, he appears to never have gotten a pilot's license, although I thought for years that he lost it the same day he got it. Back to their report. Jack had made millions of dollars in his real estate career. He was noted as a ruthless businessman. He had a habit of carrying large sums of cash and buying expensive things, including airplanes, on impulse. In spite of his wealth, however, he lived frugally and sometimes even scavenged for food in dumpsters. Then this was my comment. "I never get credit for being the one to actually make our millions. Don can barely read, which is always left out. I did the research and legwork. Don came along for the ride sometimes, once I selected the best deals to show him and put everything in his name or corporations he created or trusts that I created." He and his wife, Carole, owned wildlife on Easy Street, later called Big Cat Rescue, a 40-acre wildlife park in Citrus Park, Florida, where approximately 200 animals, including about 120 exotic cats, as well as otters, llamas, and horses lived. In June 1997, 2 months before his disappearance, Jack had sought a temporary domestic violence injunction to remove his wife, Carole, from their home, telling a judge that she had threatened to kill him and told him to be out of the house by June 12th. The judge refused to issue the injunction, however. Carole said she asked Jack to go see a psychiatrist, and he went, but only for one appointment. He didn't return for any follow-up visits. She stated he had told her several times that he wanted a divorce, but she didn't think he was being serious. She also denied ever having a serious argument with him, in spite of what Jack had claimed earlier. And then my comment was, I was trying to get Don to go see an Alzheimer's specialist. Back to their report. After his disappearance, Jack's 4 children from his first marriage fought with Carole over control of his business and property. They believe foul play was involved in his disappearance. Carole refused to cooperate with the police investigation into his disappearance or take a polygraph, saying her attorney had advised against it. All the other members of the family volunteered to take polygraphs, and my response was, my attorney did say that a polygraph, even if I passed it, would be used against me as being inconclusive, so there was no upside to taking one. They said it measures whether you have an emotional response to a question, and this was such an emotional event, there was no way that I wouldn't. If I didn't, they would say I lacked emotion and try to use that against me. Back to their report. Authorities got reports that Jack was in Costa Rica, where he owned 200 acres of land, which they keep calling him Jack. Nobody ever called him Jack. But I didn't write that. It just occurs to me as I'm reading this. Authorities got reports that Jack was in Costa Rica, where he owned 200 acres of land and several apartment buildings. Earlier, in 1997, he had begun transferring ownership of his properties to Florida to Wito, and then I put in a comment, Whitco was the name, and he only put Costa Rica property into it that I recall. Later, I found one U.S. mortgage that he had transferred. He made me the beneficiary of the Whitco stocks. Back to their report. In Florida to Wito Corporation, a Costa Rican company he controlled. Police went to Costa Rica, investigated for 5 days, and spoke to most of Jack's acquaintances there, but found no evidence that he'd traveled there after his disappearance. The circumstances of his disappearance are unclear. Investigative agency, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Source information, Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. The Tampa Bay Times. The Tampa Tribune. NamUs. Updated one time since October 12 of 2004. Last updated September 22 of 2018. Case file added. And then I commented, I didn't see a link to a case file. This site and the NamUs both say Don's alias was Bob Martinez, but it was Bob Martin. This screenshot is from when I found Anne McQueen was still apparently trying to discredit me, and I believe she was still lying to Don's kids. I discovered that Anne is working for Wendell Williams all these years later. So this post says, Anne McQueen, Sunday at 4:49 p.m., and I'm guessing that this was August 18th of 2019 because this is where I've got it posted. Just a reminder that 22 years ago, my dad disappeared under mysterious circumstances from the Tampa Bay area. On a Friday, he told his office staff he was going home to ask his wife Carole for a divorce and was never seen again. There's been renewed interest in his case recently, but we still need your help. Please share. If you know anything or heard anything, please contact the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Thank you. And it looks like maybe Anne was reposting something that was written by one of his daughters, because Anne is not one of his daughters. And there was another post from Linda Sanchez that said, okay, I was finally able to make this post public. My dad, Don Lewis, is this all the same? No. My dad, Don Lewis, disappeared under mysterious circumstances from the Tampa Bay area August 18th or over that weekend in 1997. 22 years later, we still do not have closure. What we do know is that he told his office staff that he was going home to ask for a divorce from his second wife, Carole, of Big Cat Rescue, but was never seen again. On our last interview with the sheriff's office, we were told Carole is their prime suspect, but they need more evidence. Think way back at this news story. It was on the news in several papers, including December 1997 People's Magazine. You can also Google his name to learn more. There has been renewed interest in his case recently, so if anyone remembers or heard anything, please contact the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Thank you. My diary. For years, these corporations and Wendell's kids' names used a mailing address of 4815 Northwest Shore Boulevard, Tampa, but that's been a vacant lot for at least 20 years. Then the document showed that they moved to the 4th floor of an 800 East Baker Street in Tampa, but that's a 2-story house in a residential neighborhood. Anne's Facebook profile says that she's self-employed. It pains me to see Linda being so sad and seemingly misled by Anne. Since my diaries had been stolen at the time of dealing with her, I didn't have copies to show her how deteriorated her father's mind had become by June 3rd of 1997, when he was calling everyone by her name and saying he had spoken to her by phone that day, when it's very unlikely he did. If you're enjoying my diary, please like, share, and subscribe. You can find other ways to connect to me over at bigcatrescue.org/Carole.Baskin.